young kids at home, homemade math in the
Batteries,
summer.
remember
Let
your
them
breakfast, remember your plugs, and don't forget to bring your glasses if you need.
This is another craft that we could make. It's called a student in college. It's a practice SAT. And so the idea is if you're in the 9th grade or you're in the 10th grade, the ACT is ticket to college. Time test, wear a watch. Are my glasses. So let's say that I
Joining us today on Homemade Math. Welcome to Homemade Math, the ACT show. We're delighted to have you with us today. I'm Judy Conrad, and Natalie Feast, our math specialist from the Fayette County Schools, is here. We want to remind you that this year it's the road to success, and it begins on one of 3 days, March the 7th, March the 8th, or March the 9th of this year for the ACT. And by the way, what is the ACT for some of our friends who may not really be familiar?
Sure. The ACT is the American College Test. And what I tell kids is this is your one-way ticket to college. So ACT, one-way ticket to college. Let's give it our best.
Now, is the ACT only for juniors?
Anyone can pay to take the ACT as long as you're at least 13 years old. So 7th graders, high school seniors, adults can all take the ACT.
Tell us a little bit more, Natalie, about this window for the ACT.
Parents may remember this. In the previous years, it's always been on one specific day that we took the ACT, remember? But this year, schools have an opportunity to do it over a window of days. So it's important for school students to go and ask their math teacher, ask their counselor, which specific day will our school take the ACT this March? Probably Tuesday, March the 7th, but be sure to ask.
Be sure to ask because it is offered on 3 days in various places. What we're going to do now is we want to talk to you about something very important. We want to start the show off with 2 important areas of prep work, if you will, before you even get to the ACT those days. And the first thing is breakfast. And a lot of kids don't want to eat breakfast, but we're going to tell you why it's so important, particularly for this test. Natalie?
So we have breakfast on display for this reason. Road to success, work ahead. The ACT is a long test. And so we want to make sure that students come to school prepared, and that means eating breakfast that morning. A lot of kids may say, Ms. Feast, like, I'm too cool to eat breakfast. But what they don't realize is on test day, maybe you want to have bacon, maybe you want to have a peanut butter sandwich, maybe because for over 3 hours you're taking a test, plus more time, it may be 1 o'clock before you're eating lunch that day. Breakfast, super important on test day.
And it doesn't have to be a regular type breakfast. I mean, breakfast is breakfast. I mean, I had a daughter who loved to eat a cold pizza for breakfast. So whatever you do, as long as you're eating something, because every year we hear from parents afterwards, I wish they would have eaten something. They got very hungry and it really affected their performance. So think about some sort of breakfast, something to get you started. The other thing is we want to tell them what they can and cannot take to the test. And this is very important. So what have we got, Natalie?
On test day, what to bring to school. First of all, we're going to arrive early to school that day, not arriving late. Next thing, if you are a person that wears glasses, you have got to be wearing your glasses that day. A lot of screen time, ACT on a computer, wear your glasses. In addition to that, you're going to be also bringing a watch because this is a time test. Important to wear your watch to school. On ACT day, you bring pencils. So you're going to bring in a bag. This is a little baggie that I sent with Feast Boys to school. So inside that baggie, homemade math, you're going to have your calculator. You're also going to be having parents at home. Remember before this time to please go buy pencils for your student so that they'll have those. So in this baggie on ACT day, do not need a huge backpack to school. You're going to bring things that you need during the school day, but most importantly, you're going to bring your confidence because this is a test we've been preparing for years. You're going to do great.
And you've got your batteries. Why extra batteries are so important?
I did bring extra batteries. One thing that we will not have, Judy, is a cell phone. So no cell phones during the ACT. You can leave that packed away in a backpack. But remember, there are things to bring, and so being prepared. We need parents, we need help with that.
Let's go on over and take a look at what the actual ACT test looks like.
Sure.
because this is important, and we've got a lot of wonderful aids to help all of you with this. So let's get started right away. What does the math test look like?
For our students, they're going to be taking the ACT on a computer. So on the computer, you're going to see a question pop up on your screen. There are 60 questions that you will take in 60 minutes. During that time, the question is on most of the screen, but then along the left-hand side, you're going to see like what number that I happen to be working on. So the prompt is going to be across the top. Then there's going to be 5 answer choices that you can choose from. That's different than, for example, other parts of the ACT that have 4 choices. So you've got 5 answer choices to go with your prompt, the question. The answer choices go from least to greatest, and the questions on the ACT math go from least challenging to most challenging. So,
well, and we're talking about that because you mentioned what it covers, but in regards to it starts with the least challenging to the, is there a section, you know, can you do these in your head, or how do you want to work those?
Doing math problems in your head is a great strategy to help you save time. We're doing 60 questions in 60 minutes. If I can look at a graph and figure out what the answer is, excellent. If I can, maybe it's probability, you're looking at red socks, green socks, yellow socks, and I can figure out the answer, great. The thing to think about, however, is this. ACT, for example, tells us, Ms. Feast, a lot of times, some of the problems you're very capable of doing. However, kids will make common errors, so be super careful if you're doing math problems in your head. Mental math, we love mental math. Just be super careful not to make a mistake.
Does the ACT also provide any type of formula sheet to help you solve the problem? An aid of that sort? What does it provide?
On our road to success, when you're thinking about let's go, one of the things that all students have to know is you have to memorize your formulas. There are over 75 different formulas that could be used with questions on the math test. So think about this. You're going to have at least 10 area formulas. You're going to have 6 volume formulas. You've got sum of interior angles of a polygon, distance formula, midpoint formula, Pythagorean theorem. You've got to memorize all of those. So students will say, do I really have to memorize those? Yes. Tip to remember today, you have to review and memorize those formulas.
Now we know, Natalie, that there's some colleges that have said about the test optional. We've heard that phrase, many of us. Explain what that is, and you know, you may not have to report your score, or you don't have to worry about it. Help us understand that, because this is important for us going into this test.
Test optional means this, and this is my road sign on the road to success. Be very cautious regarding test optional. What they don't say is that you must have some test. So what it is the ACT is optional. You could choose not to send your ACT scores, but in my opinion, the ACT is your best chance to do well. When you go to a website for a college or university, it always says, please submit your scores for placement. Because if you don't submit your ACT score, then they're going to have you take a test of their own. You're going to have to take a test. It's just, do you send in your ACT score, or do you send in a different score? Because they're going to give you a placement test.
Well, why is the math score so important to parents and students? Seems like a simple question, but why is it so important? Because we put such emphasis on this test.
The ACT math score, we do an entire show because we know it is so important, the math part of the ACT, because when you apply to colleges, you send in 2 scores. You send in your composite ACT score, which is the average of all sections of the test, and number 2, colleges and universities ask, what did you do, how did you perform on the math test? You send in 2 scores when you apply to colleges.
What is a good target math score, and could you help us understand that this really isn't based on 100 points? Help us understand the scoring.
So the ACT is not out of 100 points. It's out of 36. So when you're looking at how do I score, how do I perform on the ACT, it's going to be a scaled score. A perfect score would be 36. I think we have a screenshot. a perfect score would be a 36, but that is very difficult to do. Instead, here's our target. Look right there. 22 is the target for mathematics. All you have to get are 34 questions out of the 60 and you've met benchmark. Or maybe you get 32 out of 60. That's great. Even 27. These are goals. To take calculus, you want a 27 on the ACT math. That's 44 questions. So we want the number of questions you answer correctly gives you a scaled score. So you're right, Judy, it's not out of 100.
Yep. Now, Natalie, when we're looking at this, we want to help us understand a good way to answer these math questions, because in looking at the monitor over here with the scores and that, you've got 60 questions, you've got roughly an hour, you've got to budget your time. What would you suggest to parents to help them work us through making sure we use our time wisely?
Some people may think, oh, there's 60 problems in 60 minutes, I do one question a minute. But I caution you, the questions, remember we talked about, go from least difficult to most difficult, so at the end of the test, you're going to need longer time to do well on those questions. So if you can, use mental math strategies at the beginning. Try to get all those correct at the beginning that you can, because on the math test, every item counts the same. They're all 1 point. So let's get as many correct as we can.
Well, what about skipping a question? What happens if I skip a question? Can I go back? What can I do?
You're going to be taking the ACT on a computer, and you may not know at that point in time. Remember, you're going to have your scratch paper. You've got pencil paper. You're going to have you're working. You've got all your tools that you're working here, and you may not know how to do a question. You're not penalized by a wrong answer, so you should always guess. Do not leave any items blank. So that's a big takeaway for our road to success. Do not leave an item without a guess.
Yes.
So you can, on your scratch sheet of paper, write, for example, number 7, I want to go back and look at that, or number 22, number 24. So if you have time, you can go back, but make a best guess.
Okay. Now you mentioned about the time. How much time would you recommend that you spend on a question on an average, or do you not recommend?
It depends, because while the order change, the items will change, and it may be something that you can use a calculator on and you'll get the answer very quickly. You may want to reread it to clarify. It just really depends on, if you've practiced it, you may recognize, oh, I know the geometric sequence formula. It depends on the kids.
As we're looking at this, so we're preparing for this, maybe we can think ahead and avoid certain errors. So what are some of the common errors that students do make with the ACT?
The most common error that kids make on the ACT is making a careless error, not reading the question. So my number one thing is to remind all students for homemade math, when you're taking the math part of the test, make sure you can put your finger up on your computer screen. Make sure you answer the question that the test asks you. Number 2, don't leave any blank. You always fill in every answer. And then also, I also wanted just to remind kids that when you're trying to do well and you're thinking about common errors and common misconceptions, you can do things with mental math and you can have a best guess, but you've got a calculator that's your friend. Use all the tools. Use your diagrams. Like when you're looking at a real practice test, you're going to remember, Ms. Feast, there's always a diagram. Use the diagram. That will help you so you don't have a common error.
Well, you bring up calculators, which is where we're going next. And one of the misconceptions or maybe misinformation we've had is, I've heard from quite a few people, well, you really don't need, we talked about bringing a calculator, so we know you can do that. But they've said, you don't need to bring a handheld calculator because you got the online calculator and you can just refer to that. What's your advice on bringing your own calculator and the online?
Okay. Ms. Feast, this is serious. I'm going to stop right here, and you've got to pay attention to this right here. There is a misconception that you think, oh, I'm taking a test on a computer, I don't need a calculator. Wrong, wrong. You're allowed to have a, matter of fact, the ACT advertises, they'll be like, bring your calculator. We have a calculator policy. You can bring your fraction calculator that you love. You can bring your graphing calculator that you love. Bring whatever calculator with your bling buttons that you love. But you need a handheld calculator because when you take the test, you're going to read the screen. Then you're going to go down on your sheet of paper to work, and then you're going to type it in your calculator right then and there. You know where your probability button is. You know where if we're going to have fractions, decimal percent. You know those on your calculator. There is a calculator on your screen. When you take the time, we don't have time. This is a time test, but you can open up that calculator. You've never seen that calculator before. Also, when it opens up, it covers up the math test question. Yikes.
Whoa.
So then you've got to close the calculator. What were the numbers? Oh, I got to write down the numbers, then open up the calculator. I could have already just put that in my handheld and moved on. So I want to just make sure that we stop and make sure you know that you have to have your own calculator, no sharing also.
Okay, so let's just review that again because that is extremely important as all the information. Number one, bring your own calculator, make sure you got the extra batteries, you never know. And also understand that when you bring up that online calculator, it's going to hide what the question behind it, and it's the first time you've seen it, and that can be a odd situation. So that's a good advice, Natalie.
Another reminder with some calculators, for parents may not even realize this, but sometimes a calculator is like your cell phone and we have to plug it in to charge it. So we may want families at home to ask your students, if we don't have a familiar calculator, go to your teacher right now, go to your math teacher and try to figure out how you can borrow a calculator. If you have one, ask your child. Do you charge yours like our cell phone or do you need batteries? But let's talk about the calculator. It's an important tool that you want to use.
What helps a student raise their math score? And if you can help us with this, what are some tips you can give parents to help us get that math score raised?
By answering two additional questions will help raise a score 1 point. So every question matters. Don't give up. Even we might be towards the end and you may think, oh, I've got 4 minutes and 6 questions. Scroll through and find the question you can answer because every question matters. 2 correct items raise a score 1 point.
You know, a myth we've had and still continues even now, as computer literate as we all are and communications and everything, there's a misconception that you cannot study for the ACT because it's a national test. And we know you can. So how can we help parents help students study for this national test?
Think about this. When you approach a situation, think, how might I study? It's a national test. We know you must study. They advertise and say, you cannot remember everything that you've done since the 7th grade. You've got to go back and remember lots of mathematics. You've got to review your geometry. How you study depends on you. We have, for example, books of release tests. We know the best way to do better, to score higher, to get more items correct on the ACT is to do practice problems. You're probably going to have a math teacher in class that says, we're going to start off class, I'm going to try 2 or 3 problems in class. Really pay attention. Your math teacher is trying to help you, and if you do not know how to work that problem, ask. Some kids do best by working on a computer. This year we have a new computer program that just opened up in 2023. It's called iExcel. Talk to your math teacher. Maybe you want to practice on a computer program at school. Maybe we've talked about studying with friends. I always say, have a pizza party. I brought my pizza party with us today because, Judy, I can sit around the kitchen table on a Sunday night.
Nothing like a piece of pizza.
And I can study with my friend. We'll work it together. Some kids study best alone. Some kids may study best on the computer. Some may study best with a friend. But however you study best, just make sure to study. And it's not just one night, although that helps. But if you can do it many, many times and going back and review, that's very important.
Well, you kind of answered my next question because the next question was on math prep. Is there anything else you want to add to that one? Any other suggestions?
Math prep is important. Review your formulas. Get your calculator. Remember, there's going to be probability. Where are the probability buttons? Will that help me? Where's the division? Where is the percent? Let's think about all of that whenever we're doing our test prep and reading the questions.
One of the most important questions we get asked is the ACT a one-time only test?
There's 2 answers for this. There's one time this year that you get to take the ACT at no cost if you're a Fayette County sophomore or junior. So for our audience today, on March the 7th or in that window, you do not have to pay to take the ACT. However, you can pay to take it up to 12 times.
Mm-hmm. Okay. We want to, at this point, I also want to mention while you bring this up, we want to thank our state legislatures, and Kentucky is a forerunner in this. They deserve credit for this. They saw this about 8 or 9 years ago now that they've been at least doing this. They pay for every junior to take the test in the state of Kentucky. Here in Fayette County, the Fayette County School Board arranges for sophomores to take the test. So we want to thank them for those stuff. That's a cost that saves parents. What's the cost, Natalie, if I want to take the test again, though?
If I'm a student, and I highly encourage this, I tell every parent, I tell every student, you really need to take the ACT another time. You need to take it over and over again. If ACT says you can take it 12 times, let's take it over and over. Your score will improve. It's going to cost parents about $100 to take it for a student to take a test. I will say if you're free or reduced lunch, you can go to your counselor and you can, they will give you a waiver. But it costs about $100. It is an investment because the ACT is money for your future. You're going to get money back on your keys. You're going to get money for college. It's a test about money. So when you pay the $100, first of all, you're going to pay $63. That's a base pay. $63 just to show up and take the test. Then the second thing you pay for is an additional $32, and this is what is so valuable for families. The additional $32 gives you, when you pay for it, the actual test that you take on that ACT day, and it gives you a sheet of paper that says, this was the correct answer, this was your answer. So that way you can go back and study to take it again. When we take the ACT for free in March, you're not going to find, you're just going to get a score. You're not going to get your answers. But when you pay to take the ACT, you can pay the 63 plus 32. It's an expensive test, but it's worth it. Pay to take it again.
So parents can purchase it.
We want parents to purchase it. The ACT is we have homemade math because we want parents to know this is a safe time for you to work with your kids at home. Kids need help with the ACT. Yes. They need help with the website. They need help logging on. They need help registering for a test. Call your high school counselor, get help, but pay to take the test again. It is worth it.
Another question that comes up is the fact, does the ACT change every year?
That's a great question because the items on the test change every year, but the format does not change. So every time you take the math ACT, homemade math, Road to Success, the second test you take of the ACT is the math test. And it's 60 questions in 60 minutes every time.
Now the question we always want to answer, but I think you've answered some of this already, but I'm going to ask it anyway. What happens if my student does not do well on the test? We know you can take it again, but I mean, what do I do to encourage, what do we do?
Bump in the road. We're going to have bumps in the road. And that's why it's so great that sophomores get to take the ACT. It's a practice. Truly, for juniors, this is your practice also because you can take it again during your junior year, you can take it again during your senior year. So when you have a bump in the road, it just gives us feedback. You're going to learn, oh, I really should have reviewed my formulas more. Oh, I did not pace myself well. When you pay to take the test yourself, you're going to get an admission ticket. And so that's something different. You pay, and when you go back, you had a bump in the road because something happened that morning. You're not yourself.
No, you forgot to eat your breakfast too. That might.
We ate our breakfast.
Yeah.
That's important. So you get an admission ticket. You have to bring the admission ticket with your ID, with your driver's license. You might say, Ms. Feast, I don't have a driver's license. So you go to your counselor, and they give you something called a student verification form. So that's where parents come in again. If I am a student and I get it and I want to take it again, I want to take the ACT again, it's okay. You pay to take it again, and you're going to do so much better the second time, and you will increase your score. You'll increase your math score, which is so important.
Now, for those taking the test on March the 7th, March the 8th, or March the 9th, how long does it take to get the results?
In March, for the students in the state of Kentucky, across the whole state, remember this is something that our legislators pay for all students. During that March 7th through 9th window, it's going to take about 2 months to get the scores back. So that's why we want parents to know it's okay, and you should go ahead to sign up for another ACT. You can take the ACT in a different month, in April. You can take it in May. You can take it in June or July. So there's other times, April, June, July, that you can actually pay and take the ACT again, and you should.
Okay. So it takes a little time to get your results if you take that test. So not to worry if you don't get them within the first week or so. we want a fair playing field for all of our students. And for those children that may have a disability of some form, or maybe a learning disability, whatever it is, what provisions are made for them to take this test? Because we want fair ground for everybody.
Students should talk to their counselor. They know that if they have an IEP, they may have special testing accommodations. They should just talk to their counselor, and that schools will make those for them.
Okay, and do that ahead of time, like
Must do it ahead of time.
as soon as you know you're going to take the test, probably
Yes.
would be the best time to go.
Yes,
see
make an
them.
appointment to see your counselor at your high school.
Over the years, a lot of parents, or not just parents, but some students have said, well, I'm not going to be going to college. I don't need the ACT. I'm going to a good technical school, but I don't need the ACT, so I'm not going to take it. Should they take the ACT anyway?
The ACT Corporation says that of all the people who've taken the ACT, 38% are actually over the age of 25. That's pretty powerful. And what that says to us, Judy, is your score stays with you for the rest of your life. You will never be smarter than you are right now. Like, get that score and it stays, because you might change your mind when you're 25, when you're 35, when you're 19, you might say, you know what, I'd like to go back to school and I want that ACT score. So be aware your score stays with you for the rest of your life, because you might change your mind. Also, one thing that all students do before you take an ACT is you do an interest inventory. And on the interest inventory, you tell about yourself. You take the ACT, and then the ACT, when they send you your scores, they send you back a statement that says, maybe you would like to work with forestry, maybe you would like to work with computers, maybe you want to be a math teacher. But if they're going to tell you career opportunities that you should consider based on how you do that day. So the interest inventory is very valuable for students.
You talked about something else I wanted to add, because I know we've done it in the past. Can you also still get a copy of an ACT test at your school from one of your counselors to study?
For example, I went to Lafayette in the front office and I grabbed one. So it's set up at the top, 21, 22. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. So I just went in. I didn't even talk to anyone. I didn't even talk to a counselor. They just had a stack and I pulled one up. You can ask your counselor. You can ask your math teacher. Ask your librarian for these prep books. It might say this prep book was from 2018. It's okay. We've been doing the ACT for over 60 years. Same types of problems every time. So find a released book of items and practice those.
Yes,
it's a great idea.
You've got some examples in our time here. You've got some examples of some great books, and we're going to talk about, we can go to the website, because there's wonderful places on the website, because this is a technology-oriented age now, and there's plenty available on the website, isn't there, for various things for the kids?
Sure. So let's talk about some websites in particular that you may want to try. The first website that we always want to talk about is the ACT website. It's called actstudent.org. When you go to actstudent.org, what is so valuable, a takeaway for Road to Success today for homemade math, there is a free online test, just like we're going to do in March. It's a free online test that you can either do and it'll time you, or you can click the button that says, no, I want to take as long as I want. But it simulates what you're going to see on the computer, actstudent.org, and look for free ACT test. That's number one. Another website that I would like to suggest happens to be the Kentucky Virtual Library. If a student goes to their school librarian, just say, I understand that there's a free website that I can go to with the Kentucky Virtual Library, and your librarian will give you a free login. Same at the public library. If you go to the public library, they'll hook you up with a free test as well.
Okay. Well, I think we've covered everything.
We have one more helpful hint for people, and it's another website for teachers and families to remember.
That's right.
That our final website is this. It's David Crockett High School. So I brought my Coonskin by David Crockett High School. You go and you type that in there, and they have ACT problem of the day every day. I just want to do one question, but I love the David Crockett High School. You Google it, and you'll get a question of the day every day. So I highly recommend doing that as well.
Good. Well, that's a good choice as well. We want to mention what our philosophy is here on the show, and we've given you some great ideas. Take advantage of them, and take advantage of your counselors in your school. If you have questions, for heaven's sakes, go ask them. Don't wait until right the night before the test and say, gee, I wish we would have asked this, because it might be something important. But here's what our philosophy with homemade math is. Homemade math is that parents can build a bridge between the math their children do in school and what they do at home. Mostly have fun with math and know that everything they do to encourage and promote math does make a difference. Remember, one question can change a whole event. Before we leave today, we also want to thank the folks here at STEAM Academy, Dr. Christopher Flores, who is the principal. Thank you once again for allowing us to be in this wonderful facility. And there's 3 people without whom we could not do this show. And that certainly is the wonderful technical crew, the wonderful folks behind the camera. Mr. Robert Lewis, Linda Daugher, and Carrington Walker, all of them from Creative Media Productions. They're what makes this look like we know what we're doing. So we really appreciate them so much for what they do. And thanks to all of you. We couldn't do this show without, we appreciate your getting in touch with us afterwards and the comments. We try to integrate them to the questions. We want to thank Nathan, who had a lot to do with saying, hey, would you emphasize breakfast a little bit more? And so we did, but whatever. And thanks to all of you. After all, you do make a difference as parents. Thanks for watching.
Students in college, it's a practice SAT. And so the idea is, if you're in the 9th grade or you're in the 10th grade, the ACT is ticket to college. Time tests, wear a watch. Are my glasses. So let's say that I
joining us today on Homemade Math.